Revealed, amazing transformation of a struggling mother when a CEO discovers her hidden potential. As the sun broke over the horizon, casting a warm glow through the diner's windows, Sarah wiped down the counter for the 100th time that morning. The bustle of the diner was a comforting noise, the clinking of silverware and cheerful conversations swirling around her. Yet a heavy shroud of frustration clung to her heart. At 35, she was more than a waitress, she was a dreamer trapped in the unforgiving arms of reality, navigating the narrow corridors of sleepless nights and endless bills. She felt invisible here, her talents obscured by the routine of breakfast orders and coffee refills. Today, a stranger entered the diner. A tall man in a tailored suit who may as well have been from another planet. He settled himself at the counter, unaware that his casual choice of breakfast could spark a transformation. As Sarah poured him coffee, their brief exchange sparked something within her, an opportunity that felt as surreal as the morning light. "Your insights about compassion in business were refreshing," he said, catching her off guard. Did he actually hear her voice above the clatter? They exchanged thoughts, his words buzzing with corporate jargon, while hers flowed from the well of her lived experience, tinged with the struggles of single motherhood. Beneath her smile, she felt a storm brewing. Was this mere flattery from a passing businessman, or did he truly see in her what others often overlooked? As the conversation deepened, her heart raced. The prospect of stepping into his world, a world filled with polished conference rooms and high-stakes decisions, seemed both thrilling and terrifying. Could she transcend the diner, or was this just a fleeting moment of escape? The thought of abandoning her children's stability gnawed at her. She wanted to embrace this opportunity, but her maternal instincts reminded her of the fragile balance of their lives. Before she could gather her thoughts, he proposed a job, a chance to enter his firm, a doorway to influence. Her pulse quickened, her hands trembled, and the familiar weight of doubt pressed on her chest. Could she really transition from serving pancakes to strategizing corporate initiatives? The thought felt like standing at the edge of a precipice, gazing into the abyss of uncertainty. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Sarah felt the pressure mount. The recognition swirling around her head was intoxicating yet terrifying. Would they accept her? What if she stumbled? As she navigated the dizzying complexities of fear, her mind churned with doubt. What if this leap drew her away from the very family she fought so hard to support? Their laughter and hopes kept her grounded, yet the whisper of change beckoned tantalizingly just out of reach. Then the CEO presented the charity project, a beautiful chance to make a real difference, to uplift those who struggled as she did. All eyes would be on her, and with a quivering heart, she stood on the brink of that decision. Could she channel her story into this initiative? Or would stepping into the corporate realm plunge her into a whirlpool of expectations, swallowing her whole? As she caught a glimpse of the horizon outside the diner, she felt an overwhelming surge of uncertainty. Here was the cusp of something new, yet the strands of the life she knew wrapped tighter around her. What awaited her just beyond that threshold? The fulfillment of her dreams or the shattering of her safe world? The answer stretched before her, glowing with the promise of possibility and peril alike, leaving her gasping for breath as she braced for a choice that could redefine everything. The decision loomed before Sarah like an ocean wave ready to crash over her. Hours after the CEO had left, she remained at the diner, her thoughts swirling like steam from the coffee pot. Her colleagues went about their routines, but she felt eerily separate from them, encased in a bubble of uncertainty. Mornings had always been chaotic, a symphony of clattering dishes and buzzing chatter. Yet today, it felt amplified. Each cup she poured and each order she took resonated in her mind, mingling with the intoxicating promise of a new future. How could one conversation with a stranger shift the entire trajectory of her life? As she cleaned a recently vacated booth, her hands moved on autopilot, but her mind was racing. What if she went to this new job and failed? The weight of her family's hopes rested heavily on her shoulders. She couldn't afford to gamble with their security. But what if this opportunity was the answer to the yearning that had plagued her for years? The thought of making a real impact, a chance to forge her own path and set a powerful example for her children, sent a rush of electricity through her. After closing the diner that evening, Sarah plopped down on her couch, her children already tucked away in bed. The house was quiet but for the small sounds of the night crickets chirping outside and the hum of the refrigerator. She opened her laptop, and words spilled across the screen as she began to craft her vision. It was exhilarating to finally articulate her thoughts, her dreams spilling out like a long-held breath finally released. She had always been resourceful, she'd navigated overwhelming bills, and managed her time well even if it was often chaotic as a single mother. But this felt different. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about thriving, about using her narrative to impact others who faced similar struggles. Her insides churned with a blend of excitement and fear. Hours slipped past as she let the current of possibility wash over her. Tendrils of ideas connected. What if she could leverage her experience to mentor others? The charity project resonated deeply. She began drafting plans, infusing them with her insights. If she could teach others, provide a lifeline amid turbulent waters, perhaps it could bridge her two worlds. Yet, self-doubt crept in with each tight paragraph she wrote. She questioned her abilities. Did she have what it took to stand toe-to-toe with polished professionals? Her hands paused above the keys, hesitating. She thought of the CEO's genuine expression when he mentioned her insights. It reminded her that real-life experience sometimes held more value than theoretical knowledge. Wasn't that what life had taught her? The irony of her hesitation gripped Sarah. Here she was, a woman who had fought through seemingly insurmountable odds yet felt unworthy of this new challenge. Closing her laptop, she took a deep breath. It was time to examine the narratives she fed herself. Her journey wasn't defined by her occupation but by her resilience, drive, and capability to learn and grow. With determination coursing through her veins, she decided to take the plunge. Tomorrow, she would call the CEO and accept the offer, not as a desperate act of leaving her old life behind, but as a calculated choice for a brighter, bolder future. But just as clarity settled in her mind, uncertainty twisted it once more. What would be the cost of this transformation? Would she still be enough for her children when she embraced another identity? The questions lingered like an unfinished melody, beckoning her to confront them head-on. With her heart racing, Sarah closed her eyes and resolved to explore these fears. Tomorrow would mark not just a step into a new job but a journey into herself, a journey that could either elevate her or deepen her fears. The moment had finally come to face the true challenge, embracing who she could become while never losing sight of where she came from. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting elongated shadows across the room as Sarah stood staring at her reflection in the refrigerator door. Her disheveled hair framed a face marked by sleepless nights and lingering doubts. Today wasn't just another day, it was the moment she had decided to allow herself to aspire. But as the aroma of brewed coffee wafted through the air, she felt an unsettling jolt of apprehension. She paced the small space, rehearsing the conversation she would have with the CEO in her mind. "I appreciate the offer," she would say, sounding poised and confident, "and I believe this opportunity is exactly what I need to evolve both personally and professionally." Yet each time she envisioned the moment, her voice faltered, replaced by whispers of self-doubt. Who was she to presume that she could step into such a role? The ordinary world around her belied the storm brewing within. As her children buzzed to life upstairs, she fought the urge to retreat, to hide behind the familiar chaos of the diner where every interaction was comfortable and predictable. The thought of venturing into unknown territory, of negotiating her identity against the backdrop of a corporate environment, felt like standing at the edge of a precipice. With each sip of coffee, Sarah wrestled with her own narrative. What if she prioritized her career over motherhood? Would the pursuit of her aspirations lead to a widening rift in her home? It felt like a delicate dance on a tightrope, where one misstep could result in a painful fall. The never-ending cycle of guilt clawed at her insides. She envisioned her children watching her as she took on this new challenge, but what example would she set? Would she inspire them to pursue their dreams, or terrify them with the reality of chasing after something that felt just beyond reach? After a few moments of stewing over these fears, she took a deep breath, inviting clarity to brush away the cobwebs of doubt. Perhaps the truth lay not in the dichotomy of career versus family but in how she could synchronize both parts of her identity. For too long, she had viewed them as opposing forces rather than integral elements of her being. She could be both the ambitious professional and the devoted mother. Determined to reclaim her narrative, Sarah grabbed her phone and dialed the number she had saved so carefully. The ringing felt like a countdown, each chime amplifying her heartbeat. When the call connected, unexpected calm flooded her, drowning out the chorus of anxiety. "Hello," the CEO's voice greeted her warmly, as if he sensed her internal struggle. "Hi, this is Sarah. I wanted to discuss the opportunity we spoke about." The words tumbled out, tumbling into a space of uncertainty she had long inhabited. "Great to hear from you." His enthusiasm was palpable, sending a ripple of affirmation through her. What came next surprised her in its steadiness. As they spoke, she found herself articulating not just why the position excited her but also how her life experiences uniquely positioned her to contribute to the organization. Each word forged a connection between her aspirations and her lived reality. By the time she hung up, she felt lighter, as if the burdens of indecision had spiraled into a commitment toward a path that promised growth. But still, as she hung up, doubt nestled back in, whispering, "Did you really mean what you said? Could you back it up?" Feeling the weight of possibility settling on her shoulders, Sarah resolved that the conversation was only the beginning. The real challenge awaited her at work. She would need to confront her lack of experience directly and prove to herself that she was capable of navigating this uncharted territory. As she walked to the children's rooms to wake them, a flicker of excitement ignited within her. Today was the first day of her journey not just at work but within herself. Would she be brave enough to embrace the changes ahead? Dressed and ready, she caught her reflection one last time. This time, there was a newfound spark in her eyes. The woman staring back wasn't merely a mother or a waitress, she was a pioneer of her own destiny, preparing to step into a world that had yet to see her full potential. Yet, as she closed the door behind her, a new question arose. What would happen when she faced the unseen hurdles that awaited her in the corporate world? The reality of that challenge loomed, enticing yet intimidating, urging her to confront her deepest fears head-on. As Sarah stepped into the office for her first day, the clamor of the bustling corporate environment wrapped around her like a foreign language. Each person in crisp attire seemed to float past her with confident purpose, leaving her standing at the entrance as if she had just awakened in a dream. She took a moment to catch her breath, her palms tingling with anxiety. Yet, beneath the fluttering uncertainty, a steady determination echoed deep within her. She had rehearsed her introductions in the mirror, but somehow, arriving at the office felt like an entirely different performance. The receptionist smiled as she walked up, and Sarah struggled to form words. "I'm Sarah," she finally managed, hovering somewhere between professionalism and awkwardness. The receptionist's welcoming demeanor served as a balm against her frayed nerves. Navigating through the corridor felt like traversing a maze. The mixture of glass walls and open spaces seemed both liberating and suffocating. Each step was deliberate as she absorbed the surroundings, the modern decor, the vibrant art splashed against stark white walls, and the echoing sound of keyboards tapping away at profits and proposals. Sarah's mind buzzed with thoughts. How was she going to fit in here? Sure, she had proven herself at the diner, juggling tasks while keeping her family afloat, but this required a different skill set. Breathe, she reminded herself, recalling the clarity she had felt during her call with the CEO. As she entered the conference room for the morning briefing, she found herself seated among a wave of unfamiliar faces. Each seemed to possess a shroud of experience that only deepened her apprehension. She took the chance to observe them closely, noting how they contributed to discussions with authority and self-assurance. The CEO began to speak, outlining the company's quarterly goals, and Sarah fought against the overwhelming urge to retreat into silence. Then, unexpectedly, a question arose from the conversation: what practical strategies do we plan to implement to enhance client relationships? The room was momentarily silent as heads turned to one another, sending ripples of uncertainty across the table. Seizing the moment, Sarah felt an impulse bubbling within her. Could it be that the knowledge she had amassed from daily interactions at the diner, with its multitude of various personalities, held relevance here? I believe that she began, the words spilling forth more confidently than she anticipated. Building rapport starts with genuine engagement. If we understand the core needs of our clients through open dialogue, we can form lasting bonds. Her voice trembled but held a firm note of conviction. Glancing up, she caught the CEO's approving nod, which ignited a flicker of courage. The discussion shifted her way, and different leaders began to build on her idea. Sarah listened actively, contributing where she felt able, each moment sprinkling her with newfound conviction. After the meeting, she stood alone in the lobby, adrenaline coursing through her veins. What had just happened? She had not only entered the dialogue, but she had also influenced it. The realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. In the span of a mere hour, she had shifted from the shadows into the light, presenting ideas rooted in her own experience. Yet, the echoing doubt was still present: could she repeat this success? That question lingered in the back of her mind as she made her way home. Would the evening's camaraderie with her children be tempered by an internal battle of doubt? Sitting at the dinner table, a lively scene unfolded, and as smiles were exchanged, she felt a success that transcended her day's achievements. But when bedtime arrived, and her children nestled into their pillows, Sarah found herself alone with her thoughts once again. What would she do next to solidify this new identity? How could she turn today's promise into a reliable pattern of growth? Inwardly, she wrestled with the knowledge that today's leap was just the beginning. When the question of authenticity rose unbidden, she realized she had to confront what that really meant for her moving forward. And as she slipped beneath the covers, she couldn't shake the acute awareness that each new day would require an ever-evolving version of herself. What if confronting her hidden potential opened doors she had never dared to dream existed? The night deepened as unsettling possibilities danced on the edge of her consciousness, propelling her to wonder just how much she could truly unlock within herself. What awaited her just beyond this threshold of discovery? As dawn broke, it found Sarah enveloped in a cocoon of uncertainty and anticipation. The morning light filtered through her kitchen window, casting warm stripes across the table, illuminating the remnants of the previous night's victorious family dinner. She was determined not to let her wavering confidence mar the promise of this new day. After her children left for school, Sarah stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing her affirmations. "I belong here. My insights matter," she whispered, though the words felt foreign, like a perfectly timed joke that passed through her lips without full understanding. With each repetition, she endeavored to parse her own beliefs from the doubts lurking in the recesses of her mind. Arriving at the office, she felt a familiar swell of anxiety clawing up her throat. Today, there would be an important client meeting, her first chance to demonstrate her ideas in a larger context. The weight of responsibility pressed upon her, but interlaced with that pressure was a tinge of excitement. This could establish her footing in a professional world that felt so alien just yesterday. As she entered the conference room, a palpable intensity surrounded the air, conversations buzzing about last-minute strategies. The heavy mahogany table served as a battleground where her colleagues exchanged industry jargon with surgical precision. Though their expertise quelled her courage momentarily, she reminded herself of yesterday. "You've already made your mark," she thought, envisioning that moment of connection during the briefing. The meeting commenced, and Sarah's heart raced with every exchange of ideas. When her manager introduced her as the point person for building the client relationship, panic surged. "What can you provide?" her inner voice taunted. In that instant, the doubt sliced through her, but she countered the instinct to shrink away. Sitting through the discussions, she took meticulous notes, her mind working overtime to sift through strategies and outcomes. Gradually, she honed in on a thread of insight arising from her diner experiences: the innate ability to draw out genuine conversations. Pivotal engagements could thrive on understanding needs rather than merely showcasing services. As the meeting transitioned to discussions around client engagement, Sarah's pulse quickened. This was her moment. "Perhaps we could implement quarterly feedback loops, allowing for a two-way conversation," she injected cautiously. The room grew silent. It's integral that clients feel actively involved, much like at a local diner where regulars share preferences that shape their experience. The eyes of her colleagues shifted to her, some expressions laced with skepticism, others intrigued. The CEO leaned forward, curious about where she would go next. "That's an interesting perspective, Sarah," he said, urging her on. She felt her pulse ignite with renewed conviction as she explained her vision, building on the simplicity and directness of authentic communication. With each word, she felt the trepidation pooling at the edges of her mind dissipate. Here, in this high-stakes environment, she was threading together her past into a promising vision of the future. After the meeting ended, the residual buzz of encouragement floated through the air, yet self-doubt nipped at her heels as she walked back to her desk. Had she truly conveyed enough weight to her ideas? Would her contributions be overshadowed by the more seasoned professionals? The elevator ride down felt long and heavy, laden with the weight of unanswered questions. Arriving home, she found her children nestled in their routine, blissfully unaware of the storm of emotions inside her. But for the first time, she felt the stirrings of a belief that perhaps every effort, every moment of clarity, brought her closer to embracing her authentic self. She realized that the opinions of others would not define her worth or her potential. Yet, creeping uncertainty lingered. What if the credibility she sought was steeped in others' perceptions? As she closed the front door behind her, the question pressed heavily on her chest. How would she maintain this momentum, ensuring her voice remained an essential thread in the fabric of corporate dialogue? The next day loomed ahead, a blank canvas ripe for potential. Still, an unsettling notion took hold: the path to true empowerment required not just the discovery of her voice, but the courage to navigate the intricate politics of this corporate world. With every tick of the clock, she sensed a dawning realization: this journey was intimately tied to her willingness to confront her perceived limitations. What choice would she make next, and how would the truths she unearthed alter her trajectory? The morning arrived shrouded in a thick fog that mirrored the haze of uncertainty clouding Sarah's mind. As she brewed her morning coffee, the rhythmic clatter of the kettle provided a comforting counterpoint to her restless thoughts. She'd made progress yesterday, her insights had sparked interest. Yet, the rising sun didn't banish the unsettling question lingering from the day before: was she poised for deeper impact, or would she remain on the fringes of her colleagues' perceptions? Dropping the kids off at school, she felt the twinge of purpose harder than before. Today, she decided, she would explore the very politics that had seemed so daunting on her first day. Navigating corporate dynamics could be the key to solidifying her standing, but it would require deftness she hadn't mustered yet. As she walked toward her office, she resolved to immerse herself in the intricate dance of influence and respect. Sarah stepped into the office feeling renewed, ready to listen more than to speak, allowing herself to observe the ebb and flow of interactions around her. She noticed how certain colleagues wielded their authority, how the deftly placed joke or casual reference to previous success could shift the room's energy. She recognized the power of relationships woven beneath verbal exchanges, a hidden tapestry of connections that often dictated the course of events. During lunch, Sarah took a seat by the window, a vantage point that granted her a clear view of the office dynamics. A colleague, Mark, was animatedly discussing the client pitch to a newer hire. The ease of his conversation, laced with inside jokes and confident assertions, struck Sarah as an art. She questioned what made him so well received and how she could emulate that engaging style, yet remain authentic. She wanted to cultivate her own brand, one that integrated her insights as a mother and her newfound professional acumen. That evening, she attended a networking event, an environment that threatened to engulf her anxiety. Sit among the industry's giants, was she ready? She could almost hear the familiar taunts echoing in the back of her mind. But as she saw those same colleagues who had once seemed intimidating, she remembered that they were merely humans sharing their experiences, much like the gatherings she held at home. Feeling bolstered, she approached a group of colleagues, her heart pounding, and injected herself into the conversation. Initially hesitant, she let her knowledge of consumer behavior shine through. Understanding needs is critical, she said. Clients are partners in success, not just transactions. This drew nods and affirmations, igniting her to push further. The more she engaged, the clearer her voice became. She spoke about her vision for a more client-focused approach, the same principles she'd used to run her household: collaboration and mutual respect. As the night wore on, Sarah discovered a connection between her old life and her corporate aspirations, a blend of empathy and business acumen. In moments not of speaking, but of listening, she garnered respect that had seemed elusive before. She recognized an energy shift in the room as new participants sought her out, curious about her perspectives. Doubt still encroached upon her, but it was becoming a minor character in her story rather than the lead. Each conversation stood as a stepping stone toward building her presence. As she propelled herself forward, Sarah discerned the stakes were rising. She stood at a crossroads where her growth was waiting just beyond the horizon. The evening ended, but an electric tension remained. She was suddenly aware of the next steps she must take. Would she dive deeper into this new approach and face her doubts head-on, or retreat into the safety of her previous self-limiting narrative? The possibilities ahead shimmered like shards of broken glass, each reflecting a choice that could either enhance her new identity or shatter it altogether. As she fell into bed that night, the weight of her decisions pressed heavily against her chest. The clarity visible outside her window felt both inviting and daunting. The winds of change were stirring, but what further revelations about herself awaited on this uncharted journey? The very thought sent shivers down her spine, a thrilling uncertainty as she prepared to confront the complexity of her own potential. The sun rose the next morning, illuminating the room with a clarity that beckoned Sarah to rise with intention. As she sipped her coffee, a wave of determination coursed through her veins, pushing aside the remnants of doubt. Today, she vowed to leverage the connections she'd begun to forge, to transform her presence into influence rather than merely participation. She arrived at the office with her mind brimming with strategies. Drawing on the observations she'd made at the networking event, she resolved to reach out to a few key individuals, those who not only radiated confidence but also embodied the collaborative spirit she now yearned to cultivate. Mark was at the top of her list. His charisma and networking prowess were attributes she admired. With a plan to approach him later in the day, Sarah felt the familiar rush of urgency wash over her. She had to act. Much to her surprise, the morning passed without incident, allowing her a moment to breathe. She repeated affirmations in her head, bolstering her resolve as she finished her work. She closed out the projects on her desk with an efficiency she hadn't felt in weeks, each click of the mouse a reinforcement of her burgeoning professionalism. But lingering at the back of her mind was the question, would she really capture the quality that others seemed to own so effortlessly? Lunch came and went, the bustling cafeteria filled with chatter and clinking silverware. Sarah spotted Mark across the room, his laughter roaring over the din. Taking a deep breath, she approached. The distance between satellite and star seemed immense, but she pushed through. "Hey Mark, do you have a moment?" He turned, and his friendly smile put her at ease. "Always for a fellow team member. What's on your mind, Sarah?" As their conversation unfolded, Sarah found herself sharing insights from her recent experiences, weaving her narrative of client collaborative strategies alongside their talking points. This wasn't merely an exchange, it felt like a dance of ideas. To her surprise, Mark leaned in, engaging deeply with her thoughts. That's an interesting perspective. You know, we could use someone with your approach on our next project, he said, sparking a flicker of exhilaration. This simple invitation was more than she had hoped for. It felt like an acknowledgement of her place in this world. But as she basked in the moment, Sarah's thoughts turned inward. Had she not initiated this conversation, would she have ever received such validation? The remainder of the afternoon was consumed with a growing sense of urgency. The spark ignited by Mark's interest fueled a tempest of motivation inside her. She sought out other colleagues, testing her newly formed voice in more conversations, each one bringing her closer to the confidence she had previously believed unattainable. The questions that had once dulled her spirit were morphing into opportunities that demanded answers. But shadows still lurked in the corners of her mind. Was she truly ready to step into the leadership roles she had consistently shied away from? Would her authenticity be enough to command respect when larger decisions arose? The prospect of proving herself both invigorated and terrified her. Maybe she needed to confront the looming specter of self-doubt head-on, wrestle with it in the light of opportunity. As the workday drew to a close, Sarah found herself standing by the window, watching the clouds swirl in the skies above the city. It was a moment of introspection, a pause before plunging further into the unknown waters of her own potential. She felt the heaviness of the decisions yet to be made settle in her stomach. Would she navigate the tumult of professional development, or would she allow the calls for courage to remain undelivered? That uneasy thrill resided in the marrow of her bones. She was on the verge of something transformative, but the horizon was not yet clear. The time had come to face the foundation of her fears. Would she finally embrace her identity, or would she become a stranger to her own aspirations? As she prepared to leave the office, she caught her reflection in the glass. A stranger, but not unrecognizable, a woman poised at a precipice, ready to leap. But amidst the anticipation lay a pressing question: how deep into her own potential would she dive before the current swept her away? The following morning, Sarah awoke with a restlessness that tingled at her fingertips. Each breath felt weighted with expectation, like the calm before a storm. Today wasn't just another day at the office, it was a crucial opportunity to solidify her newfound stance within the company. The echo of Mark's approval reverberated in her mind, prompting an urgency that could no longer be ignored. Sarah dressed with purpose, selecting an outfit that conveyed both professionalism and confidence. She practiced her pitch in the mirror, shaping her words with intention, but the self-doubt began to creep in again. Would her ideas measure up? Would the team embrace her contributions as they had Mark's? As she approached her desk, a surge of determination propelled her forward. There was no going back. Yesterday's affirmations had shifted her internal narrative. She wasn't merely seeking validation anymore, she was ready to contribute meaningfully. She began compiling a list of ideas for the upcoming project. Mark had mentioned a project that could define her trajectory within the company. Minutes turned into hours as she meticulously crafted her strategy, balancing innovation with viability. Each keystroke felt like a small victory, a direct confrontation with the doubts that had once paralyzed her. Just before noon, she reviewed her plan one last time. It was clear, concise, and above all, reflective of her voice. Lunch was a pivotal moment, a nexus of opportunity. Sarah approached the conference room where Mark had invited her to present her ideas to the team. As she stepped inside, the familiar faces turned toward her, some inquisitive, others skeptical. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself that she had a voice that deserved to be heard. "Thank you all for being here," she started, projecting strength through her slight tremor. She shared her insights, each point meticulously crafted to draw interest rather than solicit doubt. Some members nodded in agreement, while others listened with furrowed brows, perhaps more discerning. That realization sparked a new thread of anxiety. This wasn't merely an exercise in sharing, it was her moment to influence. As she navigated through the nuances of her proposal, Sarah caught Mark's approving glance, fueling her confidence. Midway through, however, one of the more senior team members interjected with a challenge. But how do you propose we address the scalability of your approach? It seems a bit naive, he said, an edge of condescension weaving through his tone. The room shifted, tension thickened like fog. Sarah felt the cold grip of self-doubt as the familiar shadows of inadequacy whispered in her ear. But instead of retreating into silence, she leaned into her discomfort. I appreciate your concern, and it's a valid point. However, I believe that we have the existing resources and the talent to adapt my approach as we scale. Collaboration will be crucial, and I'm eager to integrate more perspectives to ensure flexibility, she replied, holding eye contact. Silence hung in the air, charged with anticipation. The room weighed her response, and for the first time, Sarah felt the power of her position. She was no longer an afterthought in the discussion, she was a participant in shaping it. When Mark chimed in, supporting her stance, a wave of relief washed over her. After the meeting, feedback began to trickle in, conversations buzzed with renewed energy around her proposal. As colleagues approached her to discuss ideas further, Sarah felt a sense of camaraderie that was both exhilarating and grounding. The evening wrapped up with a realization that not only had she faced her apprehensions directly, but she had also begun to carve out a role that encompassed both fear and courage, a duality she never thought she could embrace. Yet as she left the office, the exhilaration mingled with a lingering unease. Had she truly shaken off the doubts, or were they merely lying in wait, ready to spring back at the first sign of vulnerability? The tension between who she was and who she aspired to be remained a significant riddle. Walking home, the setting sun cast long shadows across her path, echoing the internal landscape she was still navigating. What would it take for her to not only accept her potential but to trust it completely? The questions buzzed, urgent and relentless, urging her towards an impending confrontation with her past choices and future possibilities. The next morning, Sarah stood staring at her reflection, feeling a wave of uncertainty wash over her. The confidence she thought had settled comfortably within her suddenly felt fragile, as if it might shatter at the slightest provocation. Today was not just another workday, it was the day she would have to respond to the feedback surrounding her proposal, a test of her endurance and growth. Arriving at the office, the atmosphere was decidedly different. Colleagues were buzzing with excitement about her ideas, but with that enthusiasm came an underlying tension, a palpable expectation that weighed heavy on her shoulders. She had ignited a spark, but now she faced the fear of burning out before the fire truly caught hold. Beginning her day, Sarah sought out Mark. She needed his guidance, reassurance that her efforts hadn't merely been a flash in the pan. As she entered his office, she caught him reviewing notes with a senior team member. That familiar knot formed in her stomach. Would they see her as a fleeting novelty or a legitimate contributor? Sarah, come in. Mark smiled, gesturing for her to take a seat. I've heard great things about your proposal. I'd love to discuss how we can take it further. His enthusiasm momentarily buoyed her spirits, but the trepidation still lurked in the recesses of her mind. As they discussed the intricacies of her plan, she noticed the way he listened, engaged with her ideas, and pushed her thinking in directions she hadn't anticipated. It was invigorating and intimidating. He posed questions that forced her to dig deeper, to rethink assumptions she had taken for granted. Each question was a challenge, a chance to stretch beyond her comfort zone. Think about how we can measure success, he suggested, his eyes assessing. What metrics will tell us if this approach is working? The moment felt critical. Here was a chance not only to refine her ideas but also to display her analytical capabilities. Instead of retreating into the shadows of doubt, she leaned into the challenge. We could implement a phased rollout, she posited, feeling the rush of confidence again. By gathering data on early adopters, we can adjust our strategies in real time based on concrete feedback. Mark nodded appreciatively, and it fueled her fire even more. They spent the next hour brainstorming, and each moment of engagement chipped away at her self-doubt. Yet, as the conversation shifted toward next steps, Sarah felt a shiver of trepidation. What if they didn't follow through? What if her contributions weren't enough to push the project forward? As the meeting came to a close, Mark said something that stuck with her. "You have a fresh perspective, Sarah. Don't underestimate its value. We need that level of thinking here." Walking back to her desk, Sarah felt a buzzing thrill mix with the earlier anxiety. For the first time since stepping into her role, she sensed the weight of potential not just to contribute, but to transform. What would that transformation look like for her? The prospect of truly stepping into her power exhilarated her. Later that afternoon, as she navigated through emails and project timelines, Sarah received a call from one of the senior team members who had previously questioned her approach. His tone was inquisitive, seeking a deeper understanding of her ideas. As she explained her concepts and addressed his concerns, she felt the shift. This was not just a defensive measure, she was guiding the conversation. The moment marked a revelation, her first tangible recognition of growth. She was no longer merely reacting to criticism, she was actively engaging with it, suggesting that perhaps, just perhaps, she had more to offer than just a spark. But as evening approached, a shadow of doubt crept back in. The weight of the expectations both excited and scared her. How far could this newfound momentum carry her? And what would happen if she didn't live up to it? The struggle between the fear of failure and the thrill of potential loomed large as she headed home. Tonight, she would reflect on every interaction, every guiding conversation, every moment of inspiration. Would she rise to the challenge? The time for introspection was over. Tomorrow would demand more from her. And who could say what lay ahead in the depths of her own capabilities? The real question lingered: was she ready to face whatever revelations awaited her, hidden beneath the surface of her potential? The sun rose over the city, casting a golden glow that illuminated Sarah on her morning walk. Today was pivotal. She was on her way to pitch her refined proposal to the senior leadership team. A mixture of excitement and determination coursed through her veins, nudging aside the uncertainty she had once clung to like a lifeline. The woman who had spent her days waiting tables was ready to assert her voice and take ownership of her narrative in a way that felt both authentic and earned. As she entered the office, the air buzzed with anticipation. Colleagues greeted her with nods of acknowledgement and curiosity. The hum of conversations and the rhythmic tapping of keyboards served as a backdrop to her heightened sense of purpose. Coalescing her lived experiences as a single mother with her newfound professionalism, she knew she had something valuable to share not just for herself, but for the team and clients alike. Opening her laptop, she reviewed her presentation one last time. Details flowed seamlessly, and metrics were backed by data she had quickly learned to navigate. Sarah's insights were grounded in real-life applications, drawing on the connection she had felt with clients and colleagues in prior discussions. As Mark joined her at her desk, he offered a reassuring smile. "Remember, your perspective is what sets you apart. Own it," he said, and with that reinforcement, Sarah felt buoyed, ready to step into the spotlight. In the conference room, the lights dimmed, and the attention shifted to her. The weight of the moment pressed against her chest as she glanced at the familiar faces, but instead of faltering, something shifted inside her. "Today, I want to discuss how we can enhance client relationships through authentic engagement," she began, her voice steady yet warm, striking the balance she had worked so hard to achieve. As the presentation unfolded, she skillfully navigated from strategy to execution, weaving in her unique perspective as someone who had spent years connecting with others over shared experiences. The room filled with nods of understanding and glimmers of intrigue from her colleagues. She projected that rare mix of clarity and passion, transforming her once timid thoughts into powerful dialogue. When she concluded, a moment of silence settled in, thick with anticipation. Then, one of the senior executives broke the quiet, echoing her sentiment. "That's an important angle, Sarah. We've overlooked the emphasis on relationship building. How do you envision executing this?" At that moment, Sarah felt a surge of empowerment. Responding was not a matter of defending herself, but rather of further expanding her vision. She articulated her keen ideas, demonstrating growth and depth. The senior executives began to engage, propelling her conversation forward rather than relegating her to a peripheral contributor. As the meeting wrapped up, approval and enthusiasm radiated from her colleagues. Mark leaned over and whispered, "You own that. Nice work." His affirmation struck her with a sense of validation that was incredibly grounding yet intoxicating. By the time the day drew to a close, the emails flooded in. Positive feedback from her pitch saturated her inbox, each message another testament to the recognition she had so long sought. Sarah left the office that day not just having made a mark, but having established a foundation upon which she could build her future not only as a professional but as a fulfilled individual. Later, as she settled into her evening routine with her children, the warmth of their laughter filled her heart with contentment. She watched them, reflections of the dreams she had once held in the confines of her heart. In that moment, she recognized how her journey was not solely about the pursuit of career ambitions, it was also about being a role model who demonstrated that transformation was possible through hard work and resilience. Each child's gleeful response to their mother's glowing smile highlighted a new narrative taking shape. There, in the intersection of motherhood and professionalism, Sarah found not just satisfaction but a deep sense of accomplishment. She had proven to herself that navigating corporate waters didn't mean relinquishing her identity, rather, it meant embracing all facets of who she was. As Sarah prepared for bed, the words, "You belong here," echoed in her mind, simmering with the lessons learned from each step of her arduous journey. She had acquired skills, faced fears, and most importantly, embraced her identity. Tomorrow promised not just the dawn of new challenges but the reaffirmation that she was more than capable, she was extraordinary, fueled by conviction and authenticity. Now was the time to embrace her future. And as she drifted off to sleep, a profound recognition blossomed within her, this was just the beginning. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, because your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Your support means everything.